Hello, everybody.
Children, let's continue the lesson, The Quest for a Theory of Everything. That is a profile of a great physicist called Stephen Hawking. Kitty Gill Ferguson is describing about this eminent personality. We all studied about his childhood days and what type of a child Stephen was, and we also knew about his family background, and he studied in different institutions, colleges. All these details already we all studied, and now after he joined in Cambridge for his thesis, there he started having some physical issues, right? And after this diagnosis, he came to know that he was subjected to the rare disease, right? And once this news came, he was totally frustrated. Even why? Because he thought everything was going to end, because this disease was the rarest one, right? And there was no medicine for this. So all these thoughts actually disturbed him, and even medical report came, and he was told that there will be no more years for him. His life is counted. Okay. Stephen Hawking, he had made a type of mind, right? He wanted to overcome all these things, right, with a positive mind. So he had this strong willpower that is to be pointed out here. So he thought even his life was going to or even he was going to be executed by this disease, right? Why then? The remaining days he wanted to serve for others, for the sake of others. So he wanted to sacrifice his life for the sake of others, right? So that way he started to continue, right? So this determination, this thought, right, indirectly made him strong, right? So this is what we are going to see, right now. You have to read the further paragraphs, details given by this writer, right? And now when he was having these types of issues, right, there came another twist in his life, right? At a New Year's parties at St. Albans, where Stephen studied. Just before he entered the hospital for test, Hawking met Jane Wilde. So Jane Wilde, she, for her, this graduate student seemed terribly intelligent and eccentric rather than arrogant, but he was inviting and she lacked his wit, right? Jane Wilde got attracted with Stephen Hawking's eccentric personality, right? And she decided to support Stephen, right? Then Hawking also admired her optimism and their friendship. Jane Wilde's personality is to be even noticed here. See, she thought she was a person with a strong faith in God, right? And her belief that she always believed good can come out of in adversity. So this is what her attitude. Okay, so she thought this way. So this is the right thing here in this situation. So Hawking admired, right, this quality, and they too began to realize, okay, that they wanted to do something, right? So they joined. So he applied. Stephen Hawking applied for a research fellowship. Then with the support of Jane Wilde, Stephen Hawking continued his research work, right? Then see, next we see right, Stephen Hawking's contribution, right? So Stephen Hawking started to write a book for making science understandable to non-scientists, even to commoners, right? So that is here given. In 1980, a practical need for funds launched him into a new enterprise that was to have far-reaching impact on the Hawkins and others all over the world, right? He thought of writing a book about the universe. So he wanted to fulfill this dream, right? So he wanted to include these types of topics in this book. He wanted to study cosmology and quantum theory. All right. So this book, he wanted to discuss all these things. So that way he started, right? So when he was on this way, or when he was on this effort of completing this book, there came another disaster, right? See, while the revision was going on, what actually happened, he made a trip to Switzerland. There he was down with pneumonia. Then again a setback in his life, right? So totally he was paralyzed and he was left on a life support system. Then doctors gave a choice as whether a tracheotomy operation which would remove his windpipe should be conducted or not. So such a crucial situation now, right? So what will happen if such an operation or surgery is done? It might save his life, but afterwards he would never again be able to speak or make a vocal sound, right? So with the grave misgivings, misgivings means doubts, right? Suspicion. Right, Jane consented. So Jane's personality, again here we find, so she was able to take a crucial decision, right? So her decision here, that is not worth it. So she consented. Then what happened after the surgery? The future looked very bleak. Bleak means unpleasant. So Jane remarked Hawking could no longer breathe through his mouth and nose, but only through a permanent opening made in his throat, right? So after many weeks of intensive care, he went home to join Jane and his 3 children. He was still too weak and ill to continue his research. Even he was in this situation, right? That means he was not able to speak well, right? So he was not able to live like an ordinary person, right? So what happened here? Again, he wanted to communicate with the world outside. How did he achieve this, right? With the help of a computer, with the help of a device called equalizer. Who developed this? Walt Wolters, a computer expert in California, sent him a program he had developed called the equalizer, which allowed Hawking to select words from the screen. So this way, with the help of this software called equalizer, he communicated with the world. Right, so that shows his determination, his strong mind, right? So he thought he would be unable to finish his book, but with the support of his student Brian Witt, A Brief History of Time. So that is the book authored to Stephen Hawking, right? A Brief History of Time was published in 1988. Then September 2005 saw the release of an abridged version of the original book, right? So this way he completed this work, right? Then about this book, right, one will encounter a multitude of paradoxes in this book, right? So this book is a type of mystery for everybody, right? So one will encounter a multitude of paradoxes. Paradoxes means different views, 2 different ideas, right? So when you have this type of experience of reading, or if you want to analyze, so this is this book, right? This book contains multitude of paradoxes, right? Then anyway, so that is realized, right? This book, he completed. Then it is of course a miracle that Hawking has been able to achieve everything he has. So even though he was having all these types of difficulties or obstacles in his life, right? He fulfilled all his dreams, right? Then he is actually a role model to all, right? See, writer concludes that when you experience his intelligence and humor, you begin to take his unusual mode of communication and his obviously catastrophic physical problems no more seriously than he seems to himself. So he didn't have any type of negative mind because of this type of life issues, right? So he always found, or he always thought all these type of miracle, all these types of obstacles as a gateway to his success, right? So he overcame all these things with that type of positive mind or positive willpower. So that is exactly the way he wants it, and he chooses to ignore the difficulty, right? So this is the life message to all of us, right? He chooses to ignore the difficulty and he expects others to adopt the same attitude. So he wanted others to ignore all the difficulties that may come in front of us, right, on our way to success, right? So Stephen Hawking has overcome his crippling disease, right? Crippling disease, right? So this is a combination of words, collocation, crippling disease, right, to become the supernova of world physics, right? Supernova, you all know, the star. So his mind, right, he became the supernova of world physics only by showing this type of positive attitude, right? He overcame all his difficulties and obstacles. Now I think you understood this profile, right? Now you have to read again from first part to the last, right? Then we now onwards, after we completed, we had to do some activities related to this textbook, right? So this lesson, there are some questions first. So I'm giving all these notes here. You have to take it down in your notebook, right? So first, how did Hawking startle the audience? He startled his audience by telling them that there was an end in sight for theoretical physics. He invited them to join him in a sensational escape through time and space. Stephen Hawking did not appear to be a promising choice to lead any adventure. Why? He was sitting in a wheelchair while one of his students was reading his lecture to the audience. His appearance was not healthy, and naturally, he did not appear to be a promising choice to lead any adventure. Can a person be judged by appearance alone? Justify your response. A person cannot be judged by appearance alone. Many great men in history did not have a great appearance. Napoleon Bonaparte was a very short person. Franklin Roosevelt, one of the greatest American presidents, spent most of his working hours in a wheelchair, and he walked with leg braces and canes, usually with help. Mother Teresa did not appear a robust person, but she was really great. What do you learn about Stephen Hawking's childhood? He was born on 8 January 1942 in Oxford, England. His parents were Frank and Isabel Hawking. They were not wealthy. Hawking attended the local St. Albans school. By the time he was 8, he was seriously thinking of becoming a scientist. His father wanted him to study medicine, but Stephen thought biology was too imprecise. He wanted a subject in which he could look for exact answers. He was just an ordinary schoolboy. He was slow in learning to read, and his handwriting was horrible. At 14, Stephen knew he would study maths and physics, but his father discouraged him from studying maths because he thought it offered no jobs, except as a teacher. Stephen's father wanted him to attend Oxford, where he had studied. Oxford had no mathematics, so Stephen studied chemistry and physics and only a little mathematics. At the age of 17, Hawking went to Oxford to study natural science and to specialize in physics. Comment on Hawking's life at Oxford. For about 1 year and a half, Hawking was lonely and bored at Oxford. He also didn't try hard at his academics, but halfway through the second year, he began to enjoy Oxford. What opinion did Hawking's peers at Oxford have about him? Hawking became popular and was well accepted among his peers. They remember him as lively, buoyant, and adaptable. He wore his hair long He was famous for his wit. He liked classical music and science fiction. He took part in sports. Write an example to prove that Stephen Hawking was sharp witted. Did his wit help him in any way? Stephen Hawking had applied to do a PhD at Cambridge while he was a student at Oxford. He was accepted on condition that he got a first from Oxford. Hawking thought he could get through successfully. But as the examination came, his confidence failed. Hawking got borderline marks between a first and a second. As he had only a borderline result, his examiners called him for an interview and asked him about his plans. He told the examiners boldly, "If I get a first, I shall go to Cambridge. If I receive a second, I will remain at Oxford. So I expect that you will give me a first." He got his first and he went to Cambridge. His wit helped him here to get what he wanted. Stephen's first year at Cambridge was worse than at Oxford. Why? His first year at Cambridge was worse than that at Oxford. His poor mathematical background troubled him. He found general relativity extremely tough. There was even a bigger problem. During his third year, he had started getting a bit careless. He had fallen once or twice for no apparent reason. Soon he had trouble tying his shoes, and sometimes he had difficulty in talking. How did tragedy strike Hawking after his 21st birthday? Shortly after his 21st birthday in 1963, tragedy struck him. He contracted a rare disease, amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, for which there was no known cure. It caused a gradual disintegration of the nerve cells in the spinal cord and the brain. He went into a deep depression. He did not know what to do and what his future would be. What drastic change came over Hawking after the diagnosis of the disease? A drastic change came over Hawking after the diagnosis of the disease. He had many dreams. He said that his dreams were at that time very confused. Before his condition was diagnosed, he was bored with life. But after he came out of hospital, he dreamt that he was going to be executed. He realized then that there were a lot of important things to do if he was given a reprieve. Time to live for some more time. Hawking was getting some more time to live and life was precious. What was Jane's impression of Hawking? Just before Hawking entered the hospital for tests, he met Jane Wilde at a New Year's party at St. Albans. She thought Hawking was very intelligent, eccentric, and rather arrogant, but he was interesting and she liked his wit. She fell in love with him. Write a note on the character of Jane. Jane was a shy teenager with a strong faith in God. This faith was ingrained in her by her mother. She believed that good can come out of any adversity. When she met Hawking after his discharge from the hospital, he was in a sad state. She felt that he had lost his will to live and he was very confused. She was not put off by his physical or mental condition. Hawking liked her optimism and their friendship grew. They thought that together they could make something good. For Stephen, it made a big difference. He applied for a research fellowship at CAS, one of the colleges of Cambridge University. In 1965, when he was 23, he received his fellowship at CAS. In July 1965, he married Jane. They had three children. In fact, it was Jane who gave the moral support to Hawking to overcome his adversities and do something great for mankind. Is Stephen Hawking really a great mind on par with the likes of Einstein and Newton? Justify your answer. It's not a time to make a verdict on the work of Stephen Hawking. Newton and Einstein are giants who rule the world science. It's true that Hawking has said some significant things about the universe. He has asked significant questions, but he hasn't provided adequate answers. Anybody can ask questions. Asking questions doesn't make a person a genius. Hawking used to ask daring, unexpected, and penetrating questions during the sessions involving some of the most famous and distinguished scientists in the world. That's how he earned his name as a genius and as another Einstein. I don't think his mind is on par with the likes of Newton and Einstein. Time may prove me wrong, but for the moment I stick to my answer. List the interesting subjects dealt with in Hawking's book. Where did the universe come from? Is it infinite? Does it have any boundaries? Will it come to an end? If so, how? Is there a complete theory of the universe and everything in it? Is there a beginning of time? Could time run back? The book begins by recounting the great theories of the cosmos from Newton to Einstein. His purpose in writing the book was to make science understandable to non scientists. What could have been the misgivings of Jane? While on a trip to Switzerland, Hawking contracted pneumonia and was left on a life support system. The doctors treating him suggested a tracheotomy operation which would remove his windpipe. It might save his life, but he would never again be able to speak or make a vocal sound. Jane thought her husband might die with this operation. That is why she said the future looks very bleak. Hawking would no longer breathe through his mouth and nose, but through a permanent hole made in his throat. How could he overcome his difficulties after the tracheotomy operation? Since Hawking could not speak, Walt Wolters, a computer expert in California, sent him a program he had developed. It was called the Equalizer. It would allow Hawking to select words from the screen, and this way he could continue to do his work, although very slowly. Mention some of the unique ideas and paradoxes put forward by Stephen Hawking. Some of the unique ideas and paradoxes put forward by Stephen Hawking are: in science and with people, things are often not what they seem. Pieces that ought to fit together refuse to do so. You will learn that beginnings may be endings. Cruel circumstances can lead to happiness, although fame and success may not. Two great scientific theories taken together seem to give us in nonsense. Empty space is not empty. Black holes are not black. What was Hawking's attitude to his disability? How do you estimate it in a wider social context? He chose to ignore his difficulty. He expected others to adopt the same attitude. In the modern days, we call disabled people as differently abled people. A physical disability does not have to make you desperate and a victim of sympathy. People with physical disabilities have achieved marvels. Franklin D. Roosevelt, one of the most famous American presidents, spent most of his working hours in a wheelchair and walked with leg braces and a cane, supported by others. Now we have a blind playback singer. There is also a blind music director named Afzal. Handicaps need not to be looked upon as excuses to be lazy. With hard work, one can overcome his handicaps. Helen Keller, blind, deaf, and dumb, became world famous because of her determination to succeed, and she did. Attempt an assessment of the personality of Hawking in a short paragraph. Hawking was a man of determination and perseverance. When he was at Oxford in his late teens, he was lively, buoyant, and adaptable. He wore his hair long. He was famous for his wit. He liked classical music and was interested in sports. When he was in a third year at Oxford, he applied to do a PhD at Cambridge. He was accepted on condition that he got a first from Oxford, but during the examination he had only borderline marks between a first and a second. The examiner summoned him and asked him about his plans. He told them bluntly, "If I get a first, I shall go to Cambridge. If I receive a second, I will remain at Oxford, so I expect that you will give me a first." They gave him a first and he went to Cambridge. This shows how frank and open he was. When he was 21, he contracted a rare disease which caused disintegration of the nerve cells of his spinal cord and brain. He walked around with a cane, supporting himself against a wall. His speech was impaired, but nothing stopped him from achieving what he wanted. It was this determination that attracted Jane Wald, whom he married. He lost his voice after the tracheotomy operation, but he continued working with an equalizer, which helped him to choose words from a computer screen. He asked fundamental questions like where did the universe come from and whether it has boundaries. Is there a beginning of time? Could time run back? His book, A Brief History of Time, contains a lot of paradoxes that will surprise us. He is often called another Einstein. Date of birth, parents and schooling, higher education, turning points in life, marriage, rare activities, achievements, things that make a person stand out, the message he or she gives. Helen Keller was born on June 27, 1880, as the daughter of well to do parents. When 19 months old, Helen was stricken with an acute illness that left her deaf and blind. In a short time, she forgot the few words she knew and became silent. She made use of science to get what she wanted. On the advice of Alexander Graham Bell, the inventor who was also a teacher of deaf people, Keller's parents got a teacher named Annie Mansfield Sullivan, later Maisie. Helen and Annie worked together until Anne's death in 1936. Annie taught Helen to read and write using the Braille system. When Keller was 10, she began to learn how to speak. At first, this seemed impossible, but Annie discovered that Keller could learn sounds by placing her fingers on her teacher's larynx and sensing the vibrations. The moving account of how Annie taught her to speak is told Helen Keller's The Story of My Life, 1902. Keller entered Radcliffe College 4 years later. Keller graduated with honors to worldwide acclaim and decided to devote her life to help blind and deaf people. Through her essays and articles in major magazines and newspapers, Keller explained the problems encountered by people who are deaf and blind and their responsibilities of society. In addition to the story of my life, she published Optimism, or My Key to Life, The World I Live in, and Out of the Dark. Helen Keller achieved fame in spite of severe handicaps, and she should be an inspiration to all of us. Arun's teacher is talking about his merit and achievement to his parents while giving the end of term report. Imagine what the teacher would say and complete the sentences using suitable collocations from those given in the box above. Arun has made a breakthrough in maths this year, doing excellent work compared to last year. It is, of course, a remarkable achievement on his part. This year has seen a dramatic improvement in Arun's English. His crowning achievement is his performance in the school's staging of Othello. He has found some effective ways of working with natural materials this year, and his self portrait is a brilliant success. He is now able to enjoy the fruits of hard work. Playing for the school team has certainly brought out of the best in him, and he rightly won the respect of all his teammates.